Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to my weekly deck reviews video. So you'll notice that the setup is a bit different. I have always filmed my weekly deck reviews video facing the camera. However, I've noticed as time has gone on that it's gotten more and more difficult to actually showcase the decks that I'm talking about because I talk with my hands, I get very fidgety, and I often end up moving the camera or moving the cards around, and then nobody gets a chance to actually see the cards that I'm holding up. So I thought I would try this method. I'd be really curious once you watch this video to get your feedback. So let me know down below if you like this top-down way of looking at cards when it comes to talking about the decks I've been working with for the past couple weeks. Also, welcome if you're new here. Weekly deck reviews is where I share with you the decks that I've been working with for the past couple of weeks. For the past week, usually. Wow, guys, I can't focus. This is why I'm not in front of the camera holding up cards. In any case, I was supposed to be working with the Marguerite Peterson Tarot this week and the Hero's Journey Dream Oracle, which I have here in front of me. I'm going to zoom us in so we can look at some of the cards of this gorgeous deck while I explain what happened with the decks that I planned to work with this week. So I had originally planned to work with the Marguerite Peterson Tarot. And you may have noticed, or some of you may have noticed, I put up a video with my full walkthrough of the Marguerite Peterson Tarot. The interesting thing is that I filmed that video almost immediately after announcing on last week's weekly deck review that I would be working with the deck. And by the time I was finished with the walkthrough, and I think I even said so in the walkthrough, I was definitely not interested in working with that deck. We didn't get on. We didn't get along well. Part of that I think is due to my vision and just having a hard time picking out the details in the cards. But it just wasn't for me. I really enjoyed the majors, but the minors I didn't really like. This Oracle deck, however, the Hero's Journey Dream Oracle with artwork by Rasuli, and the guidebook is by Kelly Sullivan Walden. This is a stunning Oracle deck. Unfortunately, I didn't spend a lot of time with it this week because once I realized I wasn't going to be working with the Marguerite Peterson Tarot, I realized that I needed a different Oracle deck to accompany the tarot deck I ended up picking. So we're going to talk about that. But in the meantime, if you haven't seen this Hero's Journey Dream Oracle, it's absolutely gorgeous. It's definitely worth the purchase. It is currently still available, and it's just gorgeous. I absolutely love it. So that's what I'm going to say for now on that deck. But I didn't really spend a lot of time with it because I changed up my whole plan, pretty much. I'm going to just pull my camera back just ever so slightly. Hopefully it won't wobble too much. Okay. I've been having some technical difficulties getting this video set up today. So let's talk about what I ended up picking instead. Total shift to left field, very different energy, but I decided this week that I was going to be working with my Shadowland Tarot. Now, this deck, I've already stored the really nice hardbound box that it comes in. This is a Schiffer Red Feather Publishing, deck and guidebook, and man, is this beautiful. I will link up in the cards my full walkthrough of the deck. I do think that this deck and its artwork focus mostly on the shadow, and I think that's what I tend to see the most in these cards. But it is an absolutely amazing deck to work with. I had a really good time with it. I do have a couple of thoughts and some opinions about how it worked out for me, and I'm going to be chatting about that more. But first, let's talk about how I modified this deck. So some of you may have seen this because I posted these pictures in the Supportive Tarot Facebook group, but you can really see it much better, I think, on video. Essentially, what I ended up doing is filing the gilding off, and you'll see actually that there's quite a bit of glint still because I didn't actually get all of the gilding off. And I actually thought I did a better job than I had, but I left quite a bit of gilding behind. I couldn't see it with the naked eye at first though. And then when I was done filing, and I did just use a glass nail file, so nothing super fancy, to file the gilding off very gently over a long period of time. I was just watching TV. And then after I filed that gilding off, I edged it in black ink, as you can see there. And I think the process went really, really well. I do get a little bit of a micro border on the front of some of the cards here, as you can see. But I will say that it didn't actually make the deck more comfortable to shuffle. And I'm going to just dive into this beef first and foremost. There's something about this cardstock. It's sturdy. The deck is really quite thick. So let me actually grab a Centennial Rider-Waite Smith to compare so I can show you the difference in thickness. but it's actually a really thick deck, and I believe someone commented on my walkthrough initially about just how thick this deck is, and I didn't think it was going to be an issue because I typically like a fairly thick cardstock. But you can see it's like significantly thicker than the Centennial, which is not a super flimsy cardstock, but it isn't a particularly thick cardstock either. But this deck, there's something about it. It came out of the box with just the ever so slight bow to it. I don't know if you can see that. And no matter how much I've rifled this deck, that bow has not left the deck. So the cards have just a little bit of a curve, and when I put them on the table, you can kind of see there's a little, they're lifted up a little at the corners. It's interesting because when I shuffle this deck, I actually rifle shuffle it this direction, and it's so stiff that I actually have a hard time bridging it. I mean, I can, but I typically don't bridge it. What I've been trying to do to see if I could actually straighten the bow of the deck is do just the riffle. I keep saying rifle. Oh my gosh, and I know it's driving some of you crazy. I'm very sorry. I've been saying it wrong for a very long time. But in any case, I have been trying to like riffle it, and it's still got that bow, and it's kind of driving me nuts. But more than that, even with most of the gilding off the deck, this deck just kind of is uncomfortable to shuffle. Now it shuffles beautifully hand over hand, so no problem there. It glides, it's matte, no complaints, but it just feels kind of weirdly stiff. I don't know how else to describe it, and so it actually hurts my thumbs when I'm riffling it. See, I'm practicing, guys. It's just, I don't know. So yeah, the tactile experience of working with this deck is actually really disappointing, even though I can tell that it's a decent quality deck. They put a lot of thought into this. It's a nice matte cardstock, but it does have a coating on it, right? Like, it doesn't have that raw feeling. But there's something about it that just makes it feel just a little too stiff. I would have actually preferred on this deck a more, I don't know how to describe it, perhaps a more bendy cardstock. This has that almost cardboardy feeling to it, and I think that's what is really throwing me, like almost as if it's thick but doesn't necessarily have a core to it. And I'm literally talking out my butt, you guys. I don't know if it has a core, it doesn't have a core. These are kinds of things that I feel like I've picked up over the years. But with that said, let's zoom into the cards, and I'll talk a little bit more about my actual experience reading with this deck and working with it throughout the week. I did use this, oh my goodness. I'm having a moment. Okay, we're good. We're just gonna keep on rolling. Okay, let me zoom in. So I do find that the artwork on this card lends itself to look into the shadow of the art. And I actually found that I had a hard time looking for or seeing the more light aspects of most of the cards. You can see it, and the artwork has this kind of playful, this deck kind of almost reminds me of the art style a little bit of like Where the Wild Things Are, just a little bit, but with that kind of creepy, almost Halloween-y kind of vibe to it. I cannot stand the backs. I mean, they're growing on me a little bit, but I just hate this yellow. I'm not a big yellow fan to begin with. I don't like it. I don't like it. I would have preferred like a black back or something, but yellow and me, not so much. That said, it totally goes with the theme of the deck, so I can't really argue with that logic. There's something just really interesting about this deck, and it definitely made me think differently about a lot of the cards. Like this, there's just so much to chew on, and I talk about a lot of my impressions about the shadow side of the artwork and how I found it in almost all of the cards in my more detailed walkthrough. But this week, I definitely felt like it was, to read with, it felt like it was very direct reader. It also felt like it was good at calling me out, but it didn't seem mean about it. Like, for example, sometimes, and I wouldn't call the Deviant Moon Tarot mean, but it's a little less concerned with my feelings. Whereas I feel like this tries to give just a touch of humor along with the shadows so that you have that maybe direct message, but it's got just a little bit of laughter, a little bit of something to soften the blow, maybe, perhaps a bit more. So that is the Shadowland Tarot. That being said, let's talk for a moment about the guidebook, because that was actually a big part of my experience this week. The guidebook of the Shadowland Tarot is really, really well done. First of all, because somebody had to point this out to me, look at the little spider going up the pages when you flip them. It's like the coolest thing, and I hate spiders, but I still think that's pretty fun. and the spider on the page edges is actually kind of cute. Like, it's a cute spider. I have to say that I really like the layout of the guidebook. So for every card you get a bit about the artwork that kind of describes what you're seeing in the card. You get keywords and shadowed keywords, a message, and the message is quite detailed, and it goes into usually areas about that talk sort of about the light side of the card and also about the shadow side of the card, and then also talks about things like how this card would relate to health, matters of love, finances, and then there's these reflections at the bottom, which I really appreciate, that give you something you can dig into if you like things like journal prompts, if you enjoy the way that questions or prompts related to the card make you think about the card throughout the day. And I really liked this practice. I found that really useful for me, and I would definitely see this deck being one that I would like to relegate to specifically use for shadow work in the same ways that I currently use the Dark Goddess Tarot, as in I pull a card every dark moon and I work with that energy for a month. That's also how I've worked with the Heal Yourself reading cards. I may choose to use this deck to maybe do a 1 or 3 card reading for myself every dark moon, and rotate it into my practice that way, and see if I like working with it specifically for shadow work, because I think that could be really useful. There's a loud vehicle. It's a very, very loud vehicle. Anyway, okay, I'm distracted by cars. The other thing I wanted to point out about this deck is there are some really cool spreads in the back. I'm not going to go through them all because I don't think that's necessarily fair to the guidebook creator, the author, and the deck creator, but there are some really, really fantastic card spreads in here, including a spread specifically designed to take you through a past life reading, which I think is amazing. It's a really useful spread. I've already put it into my permanent spread book, so I actually keep in my tarot journal, I keep a book in the back, this one here, that I keep spreads and notes on cards. This is like my own personal little white book, I guess you could say. So I've actually kept a couple of those spreads from the Shadowland Tarot. I took some pictures, I made some notes on the meanings of the cards, or sorry, the meanings of the positions, and I'm keeping them because they were that good. And so there were 2. The first one was a past life reading spread, and the other one is a spread specifically about breaking like changing your patterns and changing your habits. I do think that this deck is really intended to be used primarily to work on shadowy stuff, but I don't think that it's written, like the guidebook isn't written just for shadow. You could, in fact, most of the text you'll find on any given page, when you're looking at it, you'll have these shadowed keywords. Most of this text, I would say all but maybe a paragraph or 2, is about the more traditional meaning of the card, or the upright meaning of the card, and then there's usually a little bit here that may call you out a little bit or suggest how you could work with this card if this was a shadow work kind of experience for you. I hope that made sense. I feel like I'm babbling, but I had a lot to say. So while this was a good deck to work with, I don't think this is the kind of deck I would consider an all-rounder. I think it could be, but given that I have a more extensive collection of decks that I would be quicker to reach for just general readings and things like that, this one I think is going to be a lot more fun for me personally to work with around the Halloween season, and also just when I want to do shadow work. But I really, really enjoyed it. I think it's very well thought out, and I have no complaints about it, other than I really, really wish it hadn't have been gilded. I don't think the gilding went with the original deck, with this yellow backing and then gold gilding. It did not make sense to me at all. And I wish that it had a nicer, more aesthetically enjoyable, like tactilely rather enjoyable cardstock on it, because shuffling is a big part of my tarot experience, and I just did not enjoy shuffling this deck. And that may seem so silly and petty, but I like to shuffle my decks, and I'll often do them as I'm focusing, as I'm preparing for a reading, and I wasn't looking forward to that part. And I think it did impact the way that I use the deck. So that's my thoughts on that. Beautiful deck, good artwork, but really consider if this is something that has a place in your collection, because I think sometimes when we're shopping for decks, we're looking at just like, oh, there's a lot of hype around this, or this particular deck looks fun, but we sometimes don't think deeper about how it would fit into our practice. And I think this one has a very specific place in my practice, and it's not going to show up everywhere for me. Hopefully that makes some kind of sense. So instead of an oracle deck, let me just move on, or I'm going to talk about that forever. Instead of an oracle deck, I decided to work with the Lenormand deck by the same artist. So this is the House of Shadows. Well, it calls itself actually an oracle deck. So I guess I wasn't wrong. But this is the House of Shadows Oracle Deck 3rd edition by Monica Bodersky. So the same exact artist. You'll recognize the little bats just like on the back of the Shadowland Tarot. And this tuck box is one of those really nice, like sturdy tuck boxes. And as a tuck box goes, it's great. The only beef I have with it is the lid doesn't like to stay closed when the cards are in it. Wow, I'm very complainy today. I don't mean to be. And the backings of the deck are really cute with the bats. I wish they didn't have the words on them because it's got the title of the deck and the artist name on the backs, which I just think is really distracting. And I've thought about whether or not I want to edge this deck in black, but I don't think I do. So this is a monochromatic deck. Let's zoom us in again because that seems to help keep me from fidgeting too much if I can just put them down. So this has all the cards of a traditional Lenormand in that same art style as the Shadowland Tarot, but there's also a bunch of extra cards, and this was super fun to work with. In fact, I would actually say, oddly, this is a lot more universally usable to me than the tarot deck is. So here's one of the extra cards, an Ancestor card, which I think is really great in a Lenormand setup. And what's extra neat, I think, about this particular take on sort of Lenormand style divination is that between the extra cards and the juicy little tidbits in the little white book that accompanies this deck, you really get kind of a fresh take. Here's another extra card. You really get kind of a fresh take on Lenormand. I love the Mandrake card too. And I just had a lot of fun working with this deck. And I'm not always a big black and white deck fan, but the way that I worked with this deck beside the Shadowland is I would typically pull a tarot card for the day, and then I would pull 2 Lenormand cards because I typically like to read Lenormand in pairs or triplets. Oh yeah, here's another extra card, the Hand, and then the Poppet. This came up for me a bunch in relation to some specific readings I was doing. So I would pull 2 as a pair, and I would use the combination of the tarot card and the 2-card Lenormand draw to work with as my daily reading. And it was interesting because somebody recently asked me if you can read tarot and Lenormand together, if there's anything like incorrect about that. Absolutely not. I think they work beautifully together. I tend to see Lenormand as the what of a situation and the tarot as the sort of the deeper meaning, the why, the maybe the feelings and the emotions around it, whereas I see Lenormand style decks as just giving you the facts. And not so much the feelings and the depth and the emotion and all of that kind of stuff. I see Lenormand as a very straightforward, sort of blunt voice in cartomancy, and tarot having a lot more to say. So this deck was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed using it beside the Shadowland Tarot, and I don't have a ton of Lenormand decks. I think I have less than 10. I might be wrong on that, but this one was nice. Love the cardstock, but again, interestingly, this one also is a little bit on the stiff side. It's just there's something about it. Like, I know that if I do this, I'm going to bend the cards. Does that make sense? So this one also wasn't super fun to shuffle, and I definitely couldn't bridge them. But it's such a small deck that it's easy to hand over hand. It's probably like a poker size, bridge size. Like, here's a standard tarot card. And this is the size of the House of Shadows. So this is fun. And interestingly, I actually didn't have a lot of interest in this deck when it came out by itself. But then when I got the Shadowland Tarot, I really wanted this. So real quick, the booklet actually has some really great little tidbits that take a slightly different spin from traditional Lenormand. So you could definitely use this deck as a oracle deck if you're not interested in learning Lenormand, because there are really great individual meanings for each card. For example, the tree, which in Lenormand traditionally would be health, well-being, or could mean lungs and heart, family roots, etc. Here you have a more expanded meaning as well. It says, life is a string of cumulative personal experiences as well as those passed down through the generations, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and psychologically. Examine your overall health and all influences. Ensure your lungs, heart, and circulatory system are doing well. Remember that roots, while not always apparent, are at work as much as your branches or current experiences in supporting your well-being. Note surrounding cards for additional information. So you get a little bit more than you typically see in a Lenormand little white book. So I actually think this deck has a lot more to offer and might be kind of fun to work with if you're interested in kind of dipping your toes into the idea of Lenormand. I wouldn't say this would be a great Lenormand learning deck because I think it would stray too far from the traditional system for that, but I think it could be really fun if you're curious about something a little different than tarot, but something more straightforward. So that's what I have to say about this. So I've already noticed that with the top-down setup, I tend to be a little wordier. So I'll be curious to hear if you guys like that, don't like that, because I have a feeling these ones may run a little longer. So the reading cloth that I used this week beneath my cards is this really great Halloween one that Peggy made me this last Halloween season. And it's got this really cool like sort of bat anatomy all over it, which was so perfect with the House of Shadows and with the Shadowland Tarot. And on the back, it's just got this kind of almost white graffiti paint kind of effect to it, and this was a lot of fun. I think it worked really well with my cards, and it just thematically was perfect. I couldn't complain. So I'll put that away. I'm gonna get out a different reading cloth for this week. Speaking of this week, let me share with you what I'm going to be working with because I'm pretty excited. So the tarot deck that I'm going to be working with this week, I have done a full walkthrough on my channel. I will have it linked up above in the cards, provided I remember to put a link up there. But this is the Badass Baby Unicorns tarot deck. And this is a fairly recent acquisition for me, but it is so perfect for me and my personality. I love it so much, and I'm really excited to actually work with it because while I've done the walkthrough and I've played with it a lot, I haven't actually dedicated a week to getting a little bit more used to it yet, or to getting to know it better. This is a really cute deck, and it was created by Kai Cole of Our Daily Magic. It is a little on the pricey side. It is an independent deck, but there's a lot of personality and a lot of sass. So I love this. What does that say? Money, power, and respect. And it's like the King of Pentacles. And there's this pile of money. There's a pentacle in the throne. Anyway, you can see all the cards in my full walkthrough. Some of the comments on that video about what this card could have meant just cracked me up. Or what that artwork means with the pile of poo in the Emperor's throne. So funny. So I'm going to zoom this out and I'm going to show you the Oracle deck that I'm going to be working with beside this card. Or beside this deck, not beside this card. Oh my gosh, these are so great. I also love the backings, which are reversible, and they say bad AF on them. So cute. And I love the color palette. And can we just talk about like that match? Hello? Like, yeah, I know. I've become so good at matching my Peggy bags to my decks. So the Oracle deck that I'm going to be working with beside this deck was the only one I could think of in my collection that artistically would like look right next to this deck. And this is the Amethyst Oracle. This is by Jessica Bott, the creator of the Idiosyncra deck, which she is currently working kind of slowly, just getting started, so it's probably quite a long ways off, but she is working on a revamp of the Idiosyncra deck, and it's going to be called the Jessica Bott Tarot or the Jessica Tarot or something like that. So watch her Instagram for more. But the Amethyst Oracle is this really crisp, universally, I think, useful kind of deck. But when you see these two together, let me just zoom you in so you can get an idea of what they look like next to each other, because both color palette wise and art style wise, I think they work really well. We'll see how they actually read together, but let's just straighten my piles here. All right, so totally taking a page out of Dawn Michelle's book here. Thank you, Boho Tarot, for your beautiful work, because I love the way she does this with the side-by-side, and I just can't resist seeing what these are going to look like next to each other. Okay, so that gives you kind of an idea of how these might look together, and I think they're going to pair really well. Again, they both have this almost cartoony style, like simple art style, kind of vector graphic or digital kind of look to it, and I couldn't think of what else would go next to the Badass Baby Unicorns besides something like this that doesn't have a lot of figures in it. Yeah, so we'll see. Oh, there's my title card. We will see, and I will definitely keep you guys posted on how these work out, but this is a really nice cardstock. Actually, these feel the same, pretty much like the exact same cardstock. They've got that sort of smooth, like easy to riffle, easy to riffle. Yes, that's what I've been missing. Oh my gosh, and then I did a terrible shuffle. Oh, so much better. There's just something about being able to really properly shuffle a deck that just makes my experience so much nicer. But this deck is just right up my alley. It's got lots of playful energy. It's unicorns, which y'all know I am down for. But it's like unicorns with a lot of attitude, and I think that's just going to be really, really fun. I'm hoping it reads as well as it looks like it's going to read, because that would be fantastic. I already do use and love the Amethyst Oracle pretty regularly. I think that it works really well next to any deck that has that kind of crisper, more vector style of artwork, and it's got a lot of great keywords. I find it reads really well intuitively. The messages are clean and simple, and they make sense, and they're flexible, expansive keywords. I really like that. So I will be working with these two this week. I will keep you guys posted on how it all works out. Don't forget to like this video and comment down below. Let me know what you think of the decks that I shared with you today, but also let me know what you think of this style of doing the weekly deck review. Before you go, just one last little note. The reading cloth that I picked to work with both of these decks is this really cute crystal and dragons. Look at these adorable dragons. Can you see that? Oh my god, they're so cute. It's got that on that side, and then on this side it's actually got this black fabric with these little green crystal clusters, but you know I'm going to be using the purple side because look at all this purple I got going on. I think these are going to look really good on this cloth. Yes, I picked good. Anyway, this is what I'm going to be working with this week. Let me know your thoughts down below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And remember, if you want to book a personal reading with me, you can do that over at supportivetarot.com. Thanks, guys. Bye.